Welcome to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast, a mini episode for the Sunday. And, in this podcast video, depending where you're consuming this, I'm actually answering a listener's question. A follower's question. He asked me about freedom and being in relationship. And I found this to be a really interesting question because it's something that I struggled with for so long, I wanted to be free. I wanted to be sexually free. I wanted to be have freedom over my own time and space. As men, often we're very attached to time and space as things. We want to have time and space to ourselves, time to do what we want, space to be ourselves. And freedom kind of goes hand in hand with that. So we're always looking for that freedom. And a lot of us feel that when we're in relationship, that our freedom is curtailed. Our freedom is removed. It is taken over by someone else. And I did for a long time. I used to feel like relationships were like prison. And if you look at the Western world and how we talk about relationships, especially men in the company of men, I did a episode with Habib Akande, and we actually talked about this. It's the episode about African secrets to squaring and men's sexual issues. But we really talked about how we talk about relationships, and we talk about the ball and chain is one of the things, trouble and strife. Prison is often how we see it. So we see it as a talk about it in the way of a loss of freedom. And for me, this is, if I'm honest, it's a very much immature way to look at relationships. And I say this because that's what I was immaturely looking at. I'm not saying immature bad. It's just something you have to grow through. I saw relationships as just like, oh my God, someone's telling me what to do. I can't do these things anymore that I want to do. I don't have, freedom over my own time and so forth. And for me, it was a response to a childhood where my mother was a reasonably strict woman, for good reason, to be honest, because I could like to get my own way and still do. But she had her rules, and she had, this is what you do and you don't do, and you can't do those things. And, I think finances was also a restrictive thing to me in my childhood. Money wasn't something that was abundant in our life. So I felt at times very trapped about what I could and couldn't do. And listening to this, listeners, if you had a mother like this or a father like this, you may find yourself in adulthood looking to break free of that. And basically you're trying to rebound, right? So if you spent your childhood feeling trapped, you're going to move into, you might find yourself in adulthood, meaning, aiming for freedom all the time, and that being something you obsess over. So what I'm saying is it can be a bit of a kind of childhood response and immaturity acting out, seeking this freedom, of needing freedom. And there is this part around masculinity, our masculine essence, the masculine in all of us, men and women, that masculine energy yearns for freedom, right? And often for men, we think of commitment, especially in relationship and any sort of commitment, as curtailing and impeding our freedom. But what you sometimes forget is that this childhood curtailment that we had, this childhood lack of freedom, is different from an adult freedom, right? Because when we're children and when we're younger people, we are adhering to someone else's rules. But when we move into adulthood, this commitment that we create, we get to create the commitment, right? So if you're in a relationship, a committed relationship, whatever commitment looks like to you, or committed to another person, I'm not talking about sexually committed in any way, because that's something I think is outside of that. I'm committed to someone. I get to design that commitment with my partner, what that looks like, what that doesn't look like. And I know this because, this is what me and Orsa do. We designed our commitment in a way that worked for both of us. For example, I have been very honest with her that I need time alone and I need space to do my own thing. And sometimes I might go away on holidays with friends and stuff like that. So I do that. I might go away for a week with some friends, or I might go away for a weekend by myself, and I have the freedom in my relationship to do that because I've designed that into my relationship. Now, this is different from when you have a mother or father that is giving you rules, right? And they are kind of curtailing what you do because they tell you what you can and can't do. So what we often then do is we move into adulthood and we basically transplant our mother into our partner, thinking that there's this person who's telling us what we can and can't do, but they're not. We get to decide with them. We get to co-create our relationship in the way that creates a freedom for both of us that we are happy with, that we agree to. And there may be some compromise in there, but there is some agreement that happens in there. And one of the things also I want to say here is that external freedom is something that we put a lot of emphasis on. I want freedom to do what I want, to go where I want, or have sex with whoever I want, right? When actually the freedom I think most of us men are really lacking is the internal freedom of expression, the internal freedom of allowing ourselves to feel what we feel and accept what we feel, and also to express what we're feeling, our desires, and so forth. So in fact, it's not someone else stopping us from expressing, is that we don't feel we're allowed to. And that feeling of not being allowed to sits with us. But then we then kind of project out onto our partners, even though they've never told us what we can and can't do. So ultimately, it's this nurturing of internal freedom that's really important for us to do as well. And also freedom of our own minds, through meditation, breathwork, practices that give our minds space, give us a level of freedom within our own being, is really, really important to us, right? And I have to touch on sexual freedom here, because I think this is a really important part. For a lot of men, sexual freedom is what we want. Sexual variety is what we think we want. And, I lived in this world for a long time, for probably 10, 15 years. I wanted sexual freedom. That was what I wanted. But actually what I wanted was variety, sexual variety. And I didn't know how to have sexual variety with one person because, I just hadn't trained myself in doing that. I didn't know how to feel different energy with my partner, to create different sexual experiences with the same partner, and to constantly create that. So then actually the sexual freedom I desired outside of a relationship, I could create inside a relationship, right? And then also there's a factor here when it comes to sexual freedom that a lot of the time we want sexual freedom, but we're not willing to ask for it. We're not willing to say to our partners, hey, I'd like to open up our relationship, or I'd like to maybe go to sex club or sex parties, or engage in something that would give us the sexual freedom we think we want. And then we then feel that we're trapped, we don't have sexual freedom, when actually we've never actually tried to make it happen. We've never requested it. We've made an assumption that the person will not be open to it, when actually we don't know. So this lack of freedom that we're experiencing is actually not a lack of freedom, really. It's a lack of freedom in our minds. It's a lack of freedom of our own expression, when actually the freedom we want, we can create. And I think this is what you're seeing here. What I'm saying is we get to create the freedom we want it, right? And I think the ultimately inside relationship is this idea that, we'll be trapped in a relationship. A relationship won't give us the freedom to go off with our buddies when we want, or go and party when we want, and all these type of things, right? But actually, again, it can be created, right? But a lot of these is perceived assumptions about the relationship and what it will give us and it won't give us, right? Are based on maybe some past experiences, our childhood experiences, what we've seen with men and women that we've known, or just the stories that other men have told us about how women are and what they will and will not allow us to do. And I think that's an important thing, what we're told that they will and won't allow us to do. Because ultimately, when we're looking for this really broad freedom, right, of being able to do what I want and say what I want whenever I want, it stops us from going deep, right? Freedom can really come when you go deep into a relationship, right? Because when there's trust and there's safety that you cultivate in your relationship with your partner, and they know that they are safe and you can be trusted, right? However that is and whatever that looks like, you'd be surprised the amount of freedom that the relationship you are in can be created in the relationship you're in, when you can create that sort of trust and safety. So it's a really important thing. If you're willing to go deep, that's emotionally deep, be vulnerable with your love, your care for your partner, right? These things can all create freedom. Right. But actually, we have this idea that if we go deep into a relationship, we'll just get more and more trapped inside the relationship and have less wiggle room. And again, it's untrue, because again, if we have that ability to express ourselves and ask what we want, that helps us create freedom. If we can show our emotions, our love and our care and create safety in our relationship, that can allow us to create freedom. So what you're hearing here is me emphasize here that freedom can be created in a relationship in various ways. But it's like, are you willing to do the work to do that? Or would you rather have, superficial relationships because they allow you to have freedom, but then you lose all the depth that you may never have experienced, but you deeply desire, you deeply yearn for the sort of relationship you want. And this is where, people talk about doing the work, but this is a lot of doing the work, is to create this freedom. Are you willing to be able to connect deeply and emotionally, hold space for a partner, create the sort of safety for a partner in a relationship, and show up as a sort of man that can do all those things, so that you can also create the freedom you want and create trust as well, right? And I think the last thing here, I just made some notes. I'm just checking with those. One of the things with freedom as well is we want freedom to avoid responsibility, because at some point we've had responsibility and it was heavy, it was hard, or we are afraid of people expecting things from us or needing us or relying upon us, right? And if we are free and easy breezy and we have no responsibility, then no one's relying on us. No one expects anything from us. But also, no one can say we haven't done a good job. We will never feel like we're not good enough, right? So when we have responsibility, and maybe we have people that have expectations of us, maybe these agreed expectations, and we don't live up to those, we are left with this feeling of not being good enough. We left the feeling, maybe feeling ashamed of who we are, right? And this is where we create this relationship where if there's responsibility, there's not feeling good enough, there's failure involved. When actually that's, again, it's a very much a boy's way of looking at responsibility, right? And as you grow into a man, you realize that responsibility has so much more nuances, and with that responsibility, you get to exercise different elements of who you are that maybe you never saw before. You get to exercise different strengths and courages and all sorts that are inside your character that you never knew that was there. So then you're adding facets to yourself as a human being, as a man, through this responsibility. And I'm sure you would agree with me that if we can discover new parts of who we are, that's creating a freedom for ourselves, right? New, exciting parts of who we are through responsibility. And that's something that we don't always see. We don't always see responsibility because it feels like a heavy thing. So yeah, that's just me riffing on some of the stuff when it comes down to freedom. And I think the last thing is, sorry, I missed one, and really important note here is, when we have freedom, lots of freedom to do anything, to do everything, choice becomes very hard. Because you have so much choice, you can be paralyzed by the choices you make, and it can make you very inactive, right? Or it can make you very unreliable, very spontaneous, right, in your way of being, because you're just, got all these choices and you don't know what to do, and you just spontaneously take them. So this is where this freedom that you desire will often create problems in your life for you trying to create the things you want to create in your life, because there's no consistency, because we're always searching freedom. Whenever anything feels like, oh, it's trapping me, I want to run away, there's a lack of consciousness there, because you're not conscious of being like, oh, I'm not actually trapped. You're just reacting to this state, this idea about freedom. So yeah, say a big thank you to the listener who asked for this. This was really beautiful. It came out a lot different to how I expected. If this has been helpful to you, please send this to someone, a man, a woman, a child, whoever, share it. If you're watching the video here, please share on Instagram with somebody, because ultimately a lot of us men are really fixated on freedom. So when we see another man sharing something about freedom, we'll really perk up and help us listen. But if you're listening to this podcast form, same again, please share that with somebody, because I'm in the game of being of service to people, as many people as I can. And through your wonderful sharing, I get to connect with, and people get to be served by what I have to say, and the wisdom that is sometimes contained in what I say as well. And if this is something that you're struggling with, please feel free to get in contact. I love working with men around freedom. It's a really enjoyable journey, because it just touches in so many different areas of life, and then can make someone's life so much better when we come to grips with this whole idea of freedom. So if you're looking for some help, some coaching, some mentoring, please get in contact. And if that's what you want to do, that's perfect. Sorry, I lost my words there. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram at The Authentic Man, or you can find me from my email address is hello@theauthenticman.net. And ciao for now.